I am answering all of your Pacific Crest Trail questions in this video. I am so excited that I'm finally getting around to doing a PCT Q&A, and I really wanted to get this video out now in anticipation for this hiking season so that hopefully more of you can benefit from the information I'm able to share. So I'll be answering as many of the questions you asked me here on YouTube and on Instagram as possible. I'm sorry I can't get to all of them. So we're going to be talking about lots of the important topics like permits, wildlife, fear, solo hiking, periods, and much more in this video. So make sure you stick around to watch the whole thing and find out all the answers to all these different questions. So let's get into it. How many pairs of shoes did you change throughout the PCT? I think 5 or 6, and they were Ultra Lone Peaks. What, if anything, would you do differently? I'd probably try to get my pack weight a little bit lighter. It started to wear on me by the end. I did things the way that felt right for me at this time in my life, for this trail, at this moment in time. So yeah, I think just maybe trying to get a lighter pack. How did you deal with the mental challenges on your thru hike, and how did you maintain your mental health? Okay, so mental health is such an important thing to me. My whole adult life, I've had to be aware of my mental health and work on it. I started therapy for the first time in 2016 and on and off been doing it ever since. So it's something that is really important to me and I really like to be able to talk about if I can. So when I decided to book the PCT, I actually decided to book it because I wasn't feeling like myself. I had like caregiver burnout, compassion fatigue. I had been supporting my husband Brian throughout him having PTSD and then getting diagnosed and then getting more help for it. And we were finally at the point where he had a really good supportive team around him, and it was the first time that I was able to take a step back, and also his team was telling me I had to take a step back for my health and for his health. The way that I always feel most like myself is long distance hiking. So I thought, okay, this is my year to do the PCT. And that choice on its own really helped with my mental health. But then every day I was out there, my mental health improved slowly. And the biggest mental challenge for me on this hike specifically was just not being there physically for my husband. Like, it was so hard at times when he would message me and he would tell me about his day and he'd be having a really hard day and I couldn't be there to like give him a hug. Oh, it broke my heart. But what got me through that is just always knowing in my heart that it was the right decision for both of us, that I was out there and that it was going to be better for both of our mental health in the long term. And so that's what like kept me going. The other thing that I think would probably have been really helpful for me throughout my hike would have been if I was able to keep going with a therapist. But at the time I didn't really know of like a flexible option for me to do therapy and with my flexible schedule of thru hiking. And that's why I'm actually really excited to tell you about the sponsor of this video, and that's BetterHelp. BetterHelp allows some more flexibility in terms of accessing therapy, and I love that their service breaks down barriers for people to access therapy. So I see it as like such a good service for so many people, and especially if you're thru hiking, because you can access it from wherever you are. So let me tell you a bit more about BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist. First, you go to their site and you can use my link, betterhelp.com/Krista Norwick. Answer a few questions and BetterHelp will match you with a professional who has years of experience helping people with your struggles. You can do it all from your phone or computer via video chat, phone call, or messaging. And I love this feature because I just think it makes it even more accessible, because not everyone is going to feel comfortable with a phone call or a video call. You'll be matched with a therapist usually within 48 hours, which means you can get started really quickly. And that was my experience too. I was matched within 48 hours. So let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you from the comfort of your home or from the trail. And if you want to enjoy a special discount for your first month, you can use my link, betterhelp.com/Krista Norwick, or you can indicate my channel name, Krista Norwick, when you sign up. Thank you all so much for supporting me. I appreciate you so much, and thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Your experience, pros and cons of Sobo versus Novo, what were my longest water carries, and what made me choose Sobo? Okay, I'm going to talk about why I chose Sobo first. I chose Sobo for 3 main reasons. Number 1, The timing of the year worked best for me that year for my life. Number two, I thought it would be really fun to start in Washington, which is a environment that I'm most familiar with, being from British Columbia. So I thought starting with more familiar and then slowly walking my way towards less familiar would be an easier adjustment. And then third is I knew it was a less busy direction to go, and I don't do well with crowds. Like, I love people, but too big of groups and crowds, I get extremely overwhelmed. So I knew that a quieter experience would probably suit me better. In terms of pros and cons for Sobo versus Nobo, I haven't done Nobo, so I can't fully compare. But in general, I think you're more likely to have more of a social experience if you go Nobo, but that doesn't mean that you can't have it in either direction. Like, you could definitely have a social Sobo experience, and you could probably have a solo Nobo experience. It just depends on what decisions you make when you're out there. I really liked that Sobo. I did the Sierras in fall, so I wasn't having to deal with much snow at all, but I also got lucky and snow didn't fly, till pretty late. There's a con that you're sort of always thinking about pushing yourself to the Sierras. So yeah, I think there's just so many different pros and cons, and I found reading on the PCTA website their comparisons really helpful. My biggest water carry going Sobo was in the desert, and it was 20 miles, so not too bad. How safe did you feel on trail as a woman hiking alone? My biggest fear, TBH. How are you not scared? To be honest, it's also my biggest fear, and it's not that I'm not scared, it's just hard to sometimes portray my fear over camera, but I'm afraid a lot, and I'm definitely afraid of hiking alone as a woman. But I'm afraid of being alone as a woman anywhere I go in this world. That's the unfortunate reality. And so what I've realized when I got into solo hiking in 2017 is that I didn't really feel more afraid on trail than I did anywhere else in the world. Because I don't find that I'm particularly afraid of wildlife. I know that's a lot of other people's fears. I definitely am afraid of it, don't get me wrong, but it's not a huge fear for me. It's people that are a bigger fear for me. So I actually, when I'm out in nature and I'm not seeing as many people, or I'm crossing paths with people that just have great energy, then I feel more safe often than when I'm in the city. And I've learned how to support myself through my fear. So when I am feeling afraid about something, instead of letting myself go to worst case scenario and really ramp up my fears and anxieties, I've learned how to talk to myself, how to take care of myself, and to coax myself down out of those really heightened fear states and take care of my most basic needs. Because if I get a little bit too afraid, I'll stop drinking properly, eating properly, sleeping properly, and all of those things will decrease my ability to make safe decisions and keep myself safe. So I'm increasing my risk. So I've worked really hard on managing my fear, and I've also put strategies, little changes in place with what I do, because certain things bring me the most fear or anxiety. So for example, camping close to a road brings me a lot of anxiety because anybody could just drive up and park and come across my tent. And so I would choose campsites further from the road for that reason. Whether that was actually safer or not, I don't know, but I felt safer and I slept better. So that was what was really important to me. So I make little changes like that. Were you afraid of wild animals? How many bears did you see? How many snakes did you see? Okay, so I'm not as afraid of wild animals as I am of potentially scary people. So yes, I am afraid of them, but my fear of them I don't think is as intense as for other people. So I am able to sort of manage that fear and not feel too afraid most of the time. I think for me, that's actually come with a lot of exposure. Growing up here on Vancouver Island, I saw so many bears growing up, and I've just gotten used to what it's like to encounter a bear. So for me, yeah, when I see them and they're staring in my eyes, I'm not feeling comfortable, but I'm not feeling unsure of how I'm going to respond. I've practiced it enough times that I know how I'll respond. So I think that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. But of course, like, you never know what a wild animal is going to do. I did see 7 bears on the PCT, 1 in Washington and 6 in California. And I saw, I think, 2 rattlesnakes in the desert, so not too many, and 1 tarantula. And all of my encounters were just fine. The one bear encounter that spooked me the most was when I saw a cub, but I didn't see the mom. That was the scariest, because I know that the worst case scenario in a bear encounter is if you get in between the cub and the mom. So I saw the cub, they were up in a tree, and then I swiveled my head all the way around to see where the mom was, never saw her. So I backed up, and then I started banging my poles and yelling, and I watched the cub get down off the tree and run into the bush, and I heard the mom crash behind the cub. So I know she was like right nearby. And that took me a little while to recover from. I was like head on a swivel for a few miles, like feeling nervous, but you know, they were still really afraid of me and ran away. So yeah, those are my encounters. I didn't see a cougar, but quite a few of my friends saw cougars along the PCT, so it's possible. If wildlife is one of your biggest fears holding you back, my biggest tips to you would be learn how to prevent wildlife encounters. And then when I first started my solo hikes, I carried 2 forms of bear repellent with me. So I had bear spray, and I also had bear bangers with me. And that just gave me the peace of mind that, like, I should be able to deal with any situation if it comes up, hopefully. I mean, you can't prevent everything, but you can do the best that you can to act in the safest way possible. Are you allowed to sleep anywhere along the trail? So lots of questions like this about the permit. So just as a quick overview, in order to get a PCT permit for thru hiking, you need to go through the PCTA website. I don't know the permit dates when they come up, so you'll have to go and check that out yourself. But what I did was I didn't know I was going to hike the PCT until quite close to when I wanted to start, about 2 months before. So all the permits were booked up, and I just refreshed the permit page every morning to see if any had come available, because of course life happens and people have to cancel. And one day there were 4 cancellations, so I grabbed one of the dates that I thought would work good for my schedule, and that's what I did. And so it's actually quite easy, the process of going on and getting your permit. You don't have to pay anything. You can donate money, but you don't have to. So it's quite accessible, I find. For shorter sections on the trail, there are lots of sections where you don't need a permit in advance. You might need to fill out a permit at the trailhead, and I never had to fill one out where there was a payment required. So they were just, you know, reporting that you were there. But there are sections that you don't need to have a permit at all. So you can research all of that on the PCTA website. It's really informative. They have way more information than I could possibly explain to you. I only know what I learned. Was I allowed to sleep anywhere along the trail? So I would say for the most part, yes, I could sleep anywhere, technically, with my thru hiker permit. However, there were sections of trail where it was marked on my Far Out app where you were not allowed to camp. And so it was nice and clearly marked on Far Out for me, but there was also sometimes trail signs and markers saying you couldn't camp between here and here because it might be a protected area or something like that. But then also, I tended to want to camp where there were already tent icons on Far Out, which meant they were already spots that people had cleared or that were used, so that I was decreasing the overall impact on the environment. So I tried to go to spots that were either well used or, you know, a harder surface that wasn't going to get as affected by people using it for camping. How would someone who has never done a long distance hike work up to doing something of that scale? My main tips are start where you're at. So if right now you don't do any walking at all, start by doing some walks around the block. Start by short walks. See how your body does with that, and then slowly increase. If you're already doing day hikes, see if you could try doing a one-night hike. Try camping. And you don't even need to buy all the gear. You could probably rent it or potentially borrow it to see if you even like it before taking the plunge to do the super long hike. But for some people, it works really well to just go for it and just dive in and go for the long distance hike. It just depends on your personality, I think, and what you really value. I personally worked up to it over the course of several years because that's what I felt more comfortable with. And I also didn't even really know about long distance through hiking when I first started hiking. So my first ever backpacking trip was in 2014. My first ever solo backpacking trip was 2017, and then my first through hike was 2020. So it took me a few years of doing progressively longer and longer backpacking trips to feel like I was ready to take the jump into doing a long trail. So things that are helpful would be starting to walk, starting to hike, maybe slowly starting to get the gear if you know for sure you want to get into it. And then you can buy all the gear over the course of a longer time. And then if you're already backpacking and you just want to train for an upcoming hike, I suggest trying to get as much volume or days backpacking as you can, but also working on strengthening and balance can be so helpful. I've made a few videos about this in the past and about how I work with a physiotherapist to help me address my own individual needs. But I also know that a lot of training is not accessible to everyone because in order to take that much time away from work or family or whatever your obligations are, you might need to be extremely present with all of that before you go. So the other thing that I think is so helpful is when you start a through hike, you start easy. You do what feels easy on the first few days. You know, if 5 miles feels really doable for you, do 5 miles for the first few days. And it'll be hard because you're like, I just want to go, and everyone else is doing bigger miles probably. But for me, I knew 20 miles would be pretty comfortable. So I started with 10-mile days and then slowly built up to 20-mile days over the course of about 10 days. And that just gives your body time to just adapt to this new thing you're asking it to do. And trust me, by the end of your hike, you're going to be making up those miles because you'll just be flying and your body will be so used to hiking at that point. How do you deal with the eerie stuff, and have you ever gotten into a sketchy situation? I definitely have had some sketchy situations, and there are things that are more eerie than others for me personally. I always have an out or a backup plan. So if something is sketchy, I'm always telling myself I can remove myself from the situation. I can pack up, I can go, I can leave. So I did have one situation where I had planned to camp somewhere and I was really tired, I was hungry, I was low on water. Got to that camp spot, it was dark, I'd already been night hiking for a bit. And there was somebody camped there already. And normally, like, you just get used to like what it's like to encounter people on trail. Normally it's just, hey, how are you? Like really easy conversation, helpful. And you can just get like good at reading people's vibe, I guess. And so I came across this person and I was just getting bad vibes right from the start with them. I don't know if there was anything I should have been worried about with them, but I just wasn't getting the best feeling within the first couple seconds of our conversation. Basically, I was like, ooh, I don't feel super comfortable setting up beside this person. And so I, in that moment, just decided I would keep hiking to the next tent spot, even though I was so tired. But for me, just feeling comfortable when I was setting up my tent and sleeping there for the night, and just feeling confident that I wasn't near somebody who might potentially be somebody who was less safe, that was enough information for me to just decide to keep going. Those sorts of things, that only happened to me twice, where I had an interaction with a person where I was like, ooh, I just don't want to be around this person. And times where I've been not so great at this is when I have that feeling and then I don't act on it. So the night I was camped by a party that was going on, this video already came out. There were a lot of people drinking. You could hear like they're yelling, they're stumbling around. I kept having these nightmares that something was going to happen. And instinctively I knew the best thing I could have done was just pack up and hike out of there. And I would feel safer night hiking than staying around this unpredictable situation. But I didn't. I kept sticking it out, and the next day I was so tired and it just was not worth staying there at all. you know, who knows if there was anything to really be worried about in that situation, but I just need to listen to my instincts, and they're usually always right, honestly. So I listen to my instincts, and I don't feel bad about making calls to do things that maybe other people wouldn't understand, just for my own personal safety and comfort levels. What section of the PCT was your favorite? Which was the hardest? I don't have a favorite section of the PCT. It is so incredible. It is a beautiful trail. Every section was amazing. It was just stunning, beautiful, well built. The Sierra Nevadas are obviously like, boom, obviously stunning. And those episodes are gonna come out very soon, and you'll see what I mean. The desert is just so beautiful in this unique way that I just had never experienced before. So I was just like absolutely obsessed. Washington, obviously super stunning. Like, it was a great place to start the PCT. And then Oregon is also really cool. It was the hardest section for me though. And it's not because of the trail in Oregon, but it's because I had the fire closure in Oregon. So I was like a little bit afraid of that, but I was also disappointed. So I didn't even see the whole Oregon section. So I can't even fully speak on it. But also it was so rainy for me. For like 10 days straight, it was raining. And when it's raining, dreary and cold, and you're not getting any views, that is when I find it the hardest to keep going. It was so tough. And it wasn't the hardest hiking, like it wasn't more elevation changes or more technical or anything like that. It was just mentally so much tougher to push in those conditions. And it was after I'd done the fire skip, so it was like I was feeling a little bit down about that, and then that rain hit, and it was just, that was the time when I was seriously contemplating quitting. Multiple times I contemplated it. It was just so tough. So I'm not saying that Oregon isn't a great section. I'm just saying for me, that section was the hardest. And I think it just depends on the timing, when you hit it, what the conditions are. I think you can't go wrong if you want to do any section of the PCT. It's incredible. It's just so great. It's an amazing trail. How do you support this lifestyle? Do you take a leave of absence from work? So this has changed a little bit for me over the years. So the first thru hike I did, I was working full-time as a physiotherapist, and I took a 3-week leave of absence, worked for a week, and then did another 3-week leave of absence to finish the hike in 6 weeks. The second hike was the Croatian long distance trail, and that hike I was already sort of living van life with my husband, and we were living off of our savings at that point and earning a little bit of money from content creation and consulting stuff. So it wasn't really a huge change to my financial picture to be hiking, because my husband was in the van and I kept posting my long form YouTube videos throughout the whole hike. But then for the PCT in 2023, I did change things up. I decided I wasn't going to bring my laptop with me on the hike, so I wasn't going to be editing my long form videos as I went. So I knew that that income stream would be much lower, and I decided to post all my short form videos. So I was still working, I was still filming and editing my short form videos and posting them while I hiked. But then now, since I've been back, I've gotten back into physical therapy work. So I'm working part-time as a physical therapist casually. So that means I pick up shifts when I want to, and then I don't have a permanent job, so I don't need to ask for a leave of absence or vacation or anything like that when I go on my next hike. So I can basically pick up as many shifts as I want, but I'm only doing a couple days per week right now, so that the other days I can edit all these videos for you and keep making hopefully valuable content for you. So right now I'm part-time physical therapy, part-time content creator, and I think I finally found the sweet spot. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes this year. This year I will be sprinkling in my physical therapy work, hikes, content creation all of the time. And so far this year has been, I would say, like the most stable financially out of all the years that I've been doing this through hiking. So that's where I'm at now. Will it keep evolving? Probably. And there's so many different ways to do it. Like, this is just one way, but I'm sure there are just so many different ways that people do it. How much would you say the total cost was? I haven't calculated my total cost yet. I plan to though, so stay tuned. I'll be posting a blog post about that. How do you handle your period on such long hikes? So I've managed it 3 different ways: tampons, menstrual cup, and period underwear. And I've noticed pros and cons with all of them. So I'll just tell you the pros and cons. And I honestly don't even know what I'll choose to do next time because there's pros and cons to all. But tampons, the pro is I find like it's easiest for hygiene and keeping everything clean. You just put the used ones in a Ziploc, throw them out when you get to town. The con, though, is that you have to carry more materials and you're producing more waste. So, you know, it might be heavier overall. The menstrual cup, the pro, is that it's a really lightweight little cup. It's super easy to pack and bring with you. It's even easy to throw into your first aid kit, even if you're not somebody who menstruates. You could have one with you if anyone needs it, you know? So it's a really easy thing to bring. But the cons is I find the hygiene is a little bit difficult. So what I did, I used this on the Great Divide Trail and I was in grizzly country, so I felt more comfortable digging a hole and then putting my blood in there, burying it, and then I would use filtered water to rinse it. I would always make sure my hands were sanitized. I would boil it sometimes as well, but definitely more steps, and it is harder to maintain hygiene when long distance hiking. And then the period underwear, the pros was I liked that the underwear is multi-use. Like you can use it even if you're not menstruating. But you do need like a few, right? A few pairs, depending on how heavy your period is. And the cons are I found the hygiene also very difficult. And the thing with the Diva Cup is the hygiene was difficult, but like you could maintain hygiene pretty well. But with the period underwear, it was like if I didn't have like a good fast flowing stream of water, which was like pretty much all the time when I had my period the second time on the PCT, there was like no real way for me to manage the hygiene properly. You know, was able to like wipe and things like that, but it just didn't ever feel like enough. And I got really bad chafing on one of the days and I had to go into town and just like reset because I was like, this is so bad. I just need to shower and fully wash everything. Pros and cons. Pros and cons. I don't know what I would choose next time, but aside from that though, the cramps, I find I get really bad cramps, and when I get my period in town, sometimes I have to lie in bed for like a day, like I'm really not doing well. But I, for some reason, was able to hike through the cramps. I'm not exactly sure why. Like I think exercise does help my cramps. But yeah, I think I was just like, I gotta do 20 miles, so I'm doing it. Like just focused. So I did it. I took Advil. My mood is a lot more stable when I'm out there. So if I would normally have mood swings with my period, I would still feel them, but they'd be less intense. So yeah. And also I get my period less. So I had it twice in 5 months on the PCT. How did you keep your devices charged up for up to 4 days at a time? So I actually was able to keep my devices charged up for 7 to 10 days were my longest stretches, and then, you know, 3 to 4 days were my shorter sections. So for me, I had my camera with 2 batteries, so I was able to swap those out. I had my AirPods, my phone, my headlamp, and my inReach. My inReach I only turned on when I wanted to send messages, so that could last me 10 days and I wouldn't have to recharge it. My AirPods and my phone I would charge pretty much every 2 days, and my headlamp, by the end when I was doing a lot more night hiking, I had to charge it every few days. And that charging I all did with my battery bank. It had 15,000 or so milliamp hours of charge in it, so I did carry that with multiple power cords and do the charging on the trail that I needed to do. And then it was a utmost priority for me when I got to town to plug in as much as I possibly could to charge them up for the next stretch. What did you regret packing and what did you wish you packed? This I should have fully addressed in the last video that you saw, so go back and watch that. Personal hygiene tips / bathroom tips. One of your questions was so funny. It was like, I've never seen a bar of soap in your toiletries. Like, how do you clean yourself? And I thought that was very observant of you. So what I did is I would shower when there was a shower. So sometimes that was at a campground, sometimes at a house, sometimes at a hotel, and I would just use the soap that was there, or I would buy some soap or buy some shampoo and then use that. Sometimes there'd be things in the hiker box you could use as well. And hygiene is one of the trickiest parts about through hiking for sure, because sometimes you're not showering for 7-8 days. I think the longest I went was like 8 days, and I was so ready for a shower. But what I try to do is I try to maintain my hygiene as I go. So I wash my feet and my face every single night. Even if I'm not at a water source, I'll use my precious drinking water to wash my face and my feet. And one of my biggest tips is to bring one of those lightweight face cloths with you. I had one by Pack Towel and I used it all of the time. Also, I needed it at a lot of the shower spots for my tiny little towels, so it came hugely in handy. Other hikers I know will carry baby wipes and things like that. I don't. I just use water and my face cloth. And then I just try to keep myself somewhat clean as I go, but you're gonna smell. You're not gonna feel clean all of the time, and that's just part of it. And then you just really, really love those showers when you get them. I definitely showered any chance I got. And then when there were sections where there were lakes that you could swim in, I would do that too. And then, yeah, just try to maintain hygiene as best possible and just take care of it. But it's gonna be a lot different than, you know, if you're used to showering in town every day. Yeah, you're gonna feel a lot dirtier, but you feel one with nature. So there's something very like comforting about it at the same time. It's really interesting. So yeah, that's how I manage it. My fear is getting lost, not finding the trail. The great thing about through hiking nowadays is so many of these trails have the GPS route on far out, and it's been my experience that the route has been incredibly accurate. So on the PCT, there are like the GPS route's really accurate, and there are so many trail markers. There are some times where there's a fork in the trail or it's not obvious, and I did have to check my app, but that wasn't super common. But if you are navigating primarily from your phone, I do recommend having a battery bank or something that you can charge your phone so that you always have that GPS route available, or have a backup plan instead. But overall, the PCT is actually quite straightforward to follow. It's not high in terms of difficulty for wayfinding, so it is a good one, I think, if you're less experienced with wayfinding, and then you can really kind of hone your skills as you go. Maybe look at your GPS more than you even need to, just to like get more used to using it. But you definitely want to have that GPS. And a few people also asked, what if you leave the trail to go to the washroom? Oh, that reminds me, I didn't answer the washroom part of that question. Okay, I'll answer that in a second. If you leave trail to go to the washroom, how do you find it again? I just bring my phone, and then I just go. If I do get turned around, I can just follow the GPS back to the trail. So just always have it with you if you can. And then how do I manage going to the washroom? Well, I go pee and I wipe with a Kula cloth, which is an antimicrobial pee cloth. Love it. It's great. Highly recommend. And then for going poop, I usually dug a cat hole. So I sometimes would go like in a pit toilet if there was one nearby, but often there wasn't. And so I would dig a cat hole with my trowel and, you know, dig it at least 6 inches deep and pack out all my toilet paper and then just bury the poop. If someone has a few days to get out on the PCT, what section would you recommend? Honestly, you can't go wrong. There's so many amazing sections. I would choose one that's accessible to you. So maybe one that's closer to you and just see what you think, see if you like it. And also considering if you need a permit or not. So if you don't want to plan ahead and get a permit, then check the PCTA website for sections that don't require permits, and then you could go there. But I mean, everything is amazing. I loved it all. Honestly, anywhere would be great. I know that's probably not a very satisfying answer, but it's true. Like, it's just an amazing trail. Do your taste buds change over the length of your trip? Definitely the food that you're craving changes a lot. Like, you're burning so many calories that you're just craving the most calorie dense foods possible. And I honestly got tired of chewing because you need to eat so much food that I was not craving foods that were lower calorie, that I had to chew more. Like I was just like, no, I don't have energy for this. Just give me the most amount of calories possible. So I definitely changed what I was craving as I went. And my resupply boxes, because I did them in like a few different batches, I was able to change what I was sending myself based on my tastes, which I think was so helpful. Like that really helped me eat enough. I actually stabilized my body weight and I was able to eat enough for the last couple months, which was awesome because I've never actually achieved that before on a thru hike. So that was really good. Can you talk about resupply box logistics being from Canada heading to the US to thru hike? Yes. There were also questions about how to manage like the whole visa situation. So as a Canadian, as soon as you enter into the US, you're automatically given, I guess, or marked as having a 6-month visa. So it's very easy for Canadians. You don't need to apply for anything. You just enter at the border crossing. They asked how long I would be gone, and I said probably 5 to 6 months because I'll be hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. And then they were like, wow, that's so awesome. So excited for you. Hope you have fun. So it was as easy as that. I think from other countries you would have to go through an application process, but I don't know anything about it, sorry. And in terms of resupply boxes, I brought only across the border my homemade dehydrated meals, and from everything I researched, it seemed like it would be fine, and I think it was especially felt safer because they were vegan, so there was no animal products or anything, which seemed to be something that was a bit more regulated, but definitely do your own research because you know, I'm not an expert on this. All I decided to bring were my homemade dehydrated meals. I printed off the list of all the ingredients so that if they had questions, I could show it to them. And then I bought everything else once I was over in the US. And honestly, I thought it was a really good way to do it because then I know like what's in the grocery stores there, what can I look for, what isn't around that I'm used to seeing. So I found it was like a really good way to do it. And so then it was the day or 2 days before I started the PCT, I sent off all my boxes for Washington and Oregon. So I spread out my dehydrated dinners, spread out my snacks that I bought there at Trader Joe's and Safeway, and then sent everything out. So, and then I did that a few times over. Oh, one thing that's important to note is that you need to have a US address to put on the from section on your resupply boxes, because if they do get returned, they can't be sent across the border. So I had a friend's address that I could use, which was so helpful. So before you go to send them at the post office, see if you can find somebody's address that you can use. If you don't know anyone in the US, perhaps if you reached out on one of the Trail Angel Facebook groups, they might be willing to do it for you. So that's something that you need to know, or that you need to have. Would you ever do one-on-one consulting for a fee to prep for the PCT? Yeah, I've actually already done this for a couple people who reached out to me directly, but I haven't like announced I'm doing it yet. So this was a good reminder. Thank you. If this is something that you're interested in and you want to schedule a time with me, then send me an email, kristanorwickcreations@gmail.com, and put the subject line one-on-one consulting, and just let me know sort of what you're looking for, and I can talk to you more about availability, pricing, all that sort of thing. Are other trail hikers / trail angels generally friendly? Yes. 99.9% of people I came across were friendly, awesome people. It was great. One of the best parts of hiking. How do you keep your pot clean? I have watched your videos and it always looks kind of clean on trail. I decided to address this one because I think my technique for keeping my pot clean is unique. So I would eat my meal, then I would pour some of my filtered water into the pot, swirl it around, drink my gray water, and then any little remnants that were left I would wipe out with a little bit of TP and then put that in my garbage. And I was like very meticulous about keeping it clean, and that's just my technique. I don't know. Maybe it's a weird technique. Who knows? How did you cope with solitude? How did it make you feel? I actually thrive when I'm alone. I love being alone. I always have. Like, I played lots on my own as a kid and I love alone time. So for the most part, it was really good. I quite enjoyed it. But there were definitely times when the solitude got to me, and it was probably the camping alone that started to really wear on me, especially after I'd camped with some of my trail friends, and then like our schedules got different and we weren't camping together anymore, so I lost that comfort that I'd had, and then I was on my own again. That's when I really started to feel the effects of it, where I was like, wow, this is really difficult to be alone at night all of the time. I'm not sure if it affected me a lot. Like, I didn't notice, like, I don't know, me like thinking or behaving differently much, but I just remember thinking it would be nice to camp with people. But at the same time, I was just so happy to be out there that I think that was always what helped me get through those moments. Something else I realize now when I'm thinking about this is that I never fully felt alone. So even when I wasn't with people, I was like seeing animals all the time. And there's just this energy when you're out in nature where you don't actually feel alone. Like, you're amongst all of these living things. And I really drew on that energy, I guess. And I felt like I was part of the forest or part of the mountains often. And that, like, tapping into that really helped me probably protect myself from those feelings of solitude. Perhaps. That's just a theory. Oh, this is a popular one too. How can you best support a partner who is through hiking when you're staying at home? I think that what I find the most supportive is when my partner demonstrates or straight up says to me that he trusts me. He trusts that I know what I want, that I'm choosing this for a very important reason, and that I'm going to take the steps that I need to take in order to keep myself safe. That trust, I think, is so important because it helps me stay tuned in with my own instincts and my own sort of awareness of what I need to do in order to get ready. Lots of support, lots of trust. And that doesn't mean that you don't talk about your fears or anxieties. I think it's actually really important. Like, if you're feeling nervous for your partner, I think it's really important to talk about those things, but phrasing it in a way that doesn't make them think that you're questioning them at all. So saying like, hey, I'm so excited for you. I know this hike is like your dream and I just can't wait for you. And I'm so excited to support you and like just hear how it goes. And I also do have a few like fears and worries, and I'm wondering if maybe we could just talk them through. I think it might help me feel a little bit more comfortable and also understand how I can better support you. Something like that, I think, might be a really good way to sort of talk through those things. But also ask your person. Everyone's different. Ask them like, hey, how are you going to feel the most supported by me? Do you want this, or this, or do you not want that? And find out from them, because I think everyone is different in how they will feel supported. So chatting it through. Communication. Of course. Okay, so that's all the questions that I have time to answer today. Thank you so much for asking all these questions. I really hope some of these answers helped you. I love being able to share my insights if I have them. And I'm really, really glad that I was able to get this video out to you now to hopefully help you with this upcoming hiking season. So thanks again, and I will see you next week, where we'll be picking up the regular scheduled episodes of the PCT hike. So I'll see you then. Bye.